Hey guys, welcome to the live stream. It's a rainy day in Southwest Missouri. So I thought, what better day to come on YouTube and do a live than on a rainy day in Southwest Missouri? It's good to see everybody. Let's give it a little time for folks to get in here today. I want to talk about the SAVE Act. I want to talk a lot about the SAVE Act and what that's going to mean in terms of voter suppression. And then I want to answer any questions that you guys have about the SAVE Act. For those of you that don't know, my name is Will Westmoreland, and I'm the executive director of a group called Back 40 Action. And what we do, guys, is we advocate for better rural policy all over the United States in the areas of healthcare, education, better economics in rural America. We're basically out there just trying to fight the good fight to prevent rural America from drying up and blowing away in the wind. I am a Democrat. I don't hide that. I am fairly harsh on the Trump administration, but I am open to discussing all opinions. We just ask that you approach it with respect, and I'm willing to deal with anything in the comments as long as it doesn't cross the line of bullying or name calling, that kind of thing. This is a great place to come on and ask your questions, to have a debate, that type of thing. So today, that's what we want to do. I want to talk about the SAVE Act and the impact that that's going to have on voter registration and on voting in this country. I want to give it a little bit of time for folks to come in to answer their questions. Tell me where you guys all are today. Just show me the state that you're coming into the live from today, if you don't mind. Just put it down in the comments. All right, North Central Missouri. There you go. Cash rent farmer lady. I love it. I love it. All right, Woodpile. Good to see you. I love the name too. Where's everybody else? Tell me where you guys are coming in from around the country. And if you want, you can put in there whether you're a farmer or not. The back 40 is open to everybody. I'm going to be coming up your way, Tina. I'm going to be in North Dakota speaking at the Democratic Party National Annual Convention up there. I think March 6th. I think I'm going to be up there March 6th. Turtle, Northeast Missouri. Good to see you. Good to see you. Missouri is well represented on the back 40 today. That's what we call our community, guys. We call it the back 40. And we are an issues-oriented group of people. We love to come on and talk about the issues, et cetera. And that's what we're going to do today. New York, all right. You know, a lot of people don't know that we've got rural people in New York, but we sure do. We sure do. Nampa, Idaho, good to see Idaho in here. New York in here again. Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a great farming state. A great farming state. A lot of people don't know that. It's in the top 10. Wisconsin is in the top 10 in terms of agricultural production in the United States. Champaign, Illinois. We all know where Champaign and Illinois fall. Great agricultural state, great rural state, along with its big, beautiful blue cities. Well, today, guys, in case you're just joining us, my name is Will Westmoreland. I am a rural advocate, RURAL. I am the executive director of a group called Back 40 Action. We go around the country talking about issues that are critical for rural America. I don't hide the fact that I am a Democrat, but this is a place where anyone can come on and have a conversation about rural policy, policy of any kind. Today, we're going to be talking about the SAVE Act. I have been involved in politics for about 30, 35 years. I've served as a rural county party chair. I own a company that does polling and survey work. So I'm a little bit of an anomaly in that I'm a small farmer, a rural, good old boy, but at the same time, a rural Democrat with liberal tendencies and fighting for rural Democratic candidates around the country. But I want to talk about the SAVE Act today, guys. We're talking a lot and spinning our wheels, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but I just want to be honest. We're spinning our wheels a lot, really concerned about whether or not Donald Trump is going to be able to federalize the elections. And in doing so, is he going to be able to actually close down the election process in this country? And I want to tell you, like, should we always be prepared for the craziest thing? Sure, we should be. We should be prepared for Donald Trump to possibly try anything. But what I want to tell you is the more likely scenario that's going to play out is that the Republicans use legal voter suppression to suppress the vote. Okay. What do I mean by that? Well, many of you may not know unless you follow me, and then you know because I've mentioned it several times. If you follow me, you know that there were up to 12 million votes in the last election that were not counted because of legal voter suppression. Now, what do I mean by legal voter suppression? Well, when I'm talking about legal voter suppression, I'm talking about little things like when you go to fill out your absentee ballot, you sign it in the wrong place, or maybe you don't put your middle initial on the ballot like you're supposed to, et cetera. This is legal voter suppression, where legitimate votes coming from legitimate voters are kept out of the voting system because of little mistakes that were made on their ballot, that kind of thing. You may have situations coming up in the next election because they changed the law now so that the post office can only put a timestamp on something that's mailed at a regional mail processing facility, which means if you drop your mail-in ballot off at your little local post office like mine, and it's got to go to a closer big city like Springfield, which is where mine has to go to actually get its postmark, then even though you drop that ballot off on election day, it may not be counted. Well, what the SAVE Act is going to do is it's going to create a whole other set of obstacles, especially for women and older people, that they're going to have to overcome in order to be able to vote. Now, here's the point I want to make to everybody, okay? I'm going to beat this drum all the way through election day, and I want you to understand that this is being created for a problem that does not exist, okay? Voter fraud is not a problem in the United States of America. Now, you're going to ask the question, okay, Will, how do you know that? Because every Republican politician out there is talking about voter fraud on their Facebook page, on their Twitter page, wherever it might be. And the truth of the matter is, just because they're talking about it doesn't mean that it's an issue. It doesn't mean that it's a problem. Now, if you follow us on the Back 40, and if you don't do that, I'm going to ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel right now, because over time, we're going to be moving most of our content here to YouTube. If you don't follow us, I'm going to ask you to do that. Go ahead and subscribe right now. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to start following us, because we talk about all of these things. There's been study after study. And here's what we say at the Back 40. Get out your notebook, okay? I want you to take some notes as we talk about this, because as you're out there debating and talking with people, I want you to be able to speak intelligently to the problem, or in this case, as we say, to the lack of the problem, okay? Because there is not a problem with voter fraud in this country. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, we've got multiple organizations out there that have done deep dives into whether or not there's a fraud problem in voting in the United States of America. One of the best studies ever done was done by the Brennan Foundation. The Brennan Foundation went in and did a deep dive into voter fraud in this country, and they found, I want you to listen to this, they found that voter fraud is 0.0001% of the vote. Not 1%, it's 0.0001% of the vote. You literally have to analyze millions of pieces of voter data, okay? You actually have to analyze millions of pieces of voter data to even find single-digit examples of voter fraud in this country, okay? I'm going to say that one more time, and I want you to listen to this. You have to look at and analyze millions of pieces of voter data in this country to even find a handful, 5 or less, examples of voter fraud in this country. And they looked at all different kinds of fraud, and all different kinds of voter fraud have been analyzed by multiple organizations, including the Heritage Foundation, which, guess what? Found that voter fraud is not a problem in this country, okay? They've looked at the number of undocumented workers, or for you Republicans out there, I know that term makes you cringe. You like to call them illegal immigrants. They've looked at illegal immigrants, undocumented workers. They looked at people who are supposedly dead who voted. They looked at people who voted more than once. And out of millions and millions and millions of votes that have been cast, they've only come up with handfuls of voter fraud occurring in this country. Now, why is that important? Because I think there are some people out there on the Republican side that would argue, well, even if it's just a handful, we ought to pass a law to prevent it from happening. The problem, guys, is that the medicine is harder than the disease, okay? The medicine, the quote unquote fix that they put in place, all right, the fix that they put in place causes more people to not be able to vote than the actual problem of voter fraud itself. And to prove that, I go back to the study that was done. You can go find it in my videos on all my platforms. I did a study about voter suppression in the 2024 election between requiring IDs, between reducing the number of polling machines in minority precincts across this country, in terms of shutting down the time period in which you can vote absentee, etc. All of these different legal voter suppression tactics that are out there, okay, resulted in about 8 to 12 million people in the 2024 general election not being able to vote. Now, I want you to counterbalance those two things against each other, okay? We have done study after study after study that shows that even when you look at millions of examples of ballots in this country, you only come up with a handful of cases of voter fraud. But the fix that the Republicans are putting in place has prevented 8 to 12 million people from having their ballot counted. Now, let me tell you something. That is the goal. That is the goal. Now, if you're a Republican, you're going to say, now, wait a minute, Will, I was with you. I was following the data. I was with you all the way up to the point that you said that is the goal. If you don't believe me, go out there and look at the Republicans that accidentally say the quiet part out loud. Okay? They accidentally say the quiet part out loud. You can go out there right now and you can run a Google search that says North Carolina Republican official admits voter identification will reduce the African American vote. You can go out there and do a Google search right now that says Wisconsin Republican official admits that voter identification will reduce the African American vote. And you can do the same thing for Michigan, Wisconsin, and North Carolina across the board. They will say the quiet part out loud, guys, because that's what it's designed to do. If you can put more and more roadblocks in place, you make it more difficult for people to be able to get those ballots and to get those identifications, and therefore you reduce the vote. And typically that happens more in rural and African American and minority communities than it does anywhere else. Now, why is the SAVE Act even worse? Because the SAVE Act takes this legal voter suppression and it puts it on steroids, okay? Because right now, when you go sign up to vote in every single state, you have to sign a piece of paper or digitally click on a recognition that you are a United States citizen, okay? It is illegal for somebody who is not a United States citizen to vote in a federal election. Now, we have just a handful of places in the United States of America where you can vote in local elections, even if you're not a United States citizen. But when somebody tells you that illegal immigrants or undocumented workers can vote, they are lying to you, okay? And you already have to sign an affidavit or click on something that validates through the affidavit process online that you are an American citizen when you register to vote in this country. You already have to do that. And that has been very successful so far in keeping voter fraud under control. That's why out of millions of votes cast, we have very few examples of voter fraud in this country. Now, what does the SAVE Act do? Well, the SAVE Act is going to say not only do you have to sign this affidavit, okay? Not only do you have to sign this affidavit, you also have to produce documentation that is very cumbersome to prove who you are. Let me give you an example. Most of the women in this country who have been married have taken the legal last name of their husband as part of that marriage process. Many of them, even the ones that went on to get divorced, kept that last name for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it's just easier and they don't want to change everything back to their maiden name. Other times they want to keep the last name of their children if they have children. There are a whole host of valid reasons why women keep their husband's last name even after they divorce. Well, with the SAVE Act, in order for you to get the piece of documentation that you need, you have to get your original birth certificate and your name has to match what is on that original birth certificate. Now, I want you to just think about for a minute the number of women in this country right now whose name does not match the name they have on their original birth certificate. Just take a few seconds to think about that. Any woman who's been married, any woman who's been married and divorced, any woman maybe who changed her name for religious or professional purposes or because she was the victim of domestic abuse. There are millions of women in this country that have a last name or a name that's different than the name that was on their birth certificate. Peace and Love says it very well. Estimated 21 million voters may be disenfranchised, possibly even more. Took me almost 2 months to get my birth certificate and my first marriage records. And this is the purpose of the SAVE Act, guys. I want you to think about something. If you were trying to get a law passed to make it, well, let's just use some laws that have been passed. Why do you think they passed laws saying that you have to stop when a school bus stops to pick up kids and drop them off? Okay. They passed that law because kids were being injured and killed, and they could point to that data. They could say, this is the number of kids being injured and killed because of the fact that people driving vehicles are not stopping when a school bus stops. Why do you think they make school buses stop at a railroad crossing? Because they could point to data that says these are the number of kids that have been injured and killed because we have bus drivers crossing railroad crossings without looking both ways. Well, why do you suppose that they can't do that with voter ID? Why do you suppose that instead of making the argument that there's so much voter fraud in this country that we need these voter registration laws in place to prevent the fraud, why do you think they never point to the examples of voter fraud? Let me see your thoughts over in the comments. Why do you think you never see a Republican say, here's an example of 27,000 instances of voter fraud in my state. This would have made a difference in the last election. Sorry, guys. The allergies are kicking off. Because it's not true, Tina. You nailed it. Because it's not true. Otherwise, they would be pointing to it, guys. I just want you to put on your logic cap here for a minute. If there were blatant instances where thousands of people were voting incorrectly and illegally in this country, and it was making the difference in elections, they could point to that data and say, here's where it's happening, and this is what we need to do to fix it. That data doesn't exist because voter fraud is not a problem in this country. That's why they create these straw man arguments like, well, the Democrats just want people who are not here legally to be able to vote. Okay, well, if that's the case, show me the number. How many people in this country who are here illegally are voting? Well, they can't point to a number because it's infinitesimal. The number is so small that literally it could fit on two hands nationwide. They don't point to the number because the number doesn't exist, guys. The number doesn't exist. And if it does exist, it's so small that even a Republican would not support spending hundreds of millions of dollars to tamper and change the voting system in this country to prevent a problem that results in maybe 20, 30, 40 votes being changed or incorrectly cast every election cycle. This is the problem. So you have to ask yourself the question, if you truly believe in our republic, if you truly believe in democracy and republicanism, then why would you be okay with disenfranchising 21 million voters in this country to prevent 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 voters from voting illegally? There's no common sense value in that argument. Let me say it one more time. How can you, in good conscience, as somebody who loves your republic and loves your democracy, how can you say that it makes good sense or that it is sound policy to prevent 21 million people possibly from voting in this country in order to prevent 10, 15, 20 people from voting illegally? It's just not a sound, valid argument. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. And that's why whenever I do these lives on TikTok or YouTube or Facebook, That's why I never have anybody ever come up and try to debate the facts with me. Now they'll dive into the comments sometimes and type in Trump or, we love Trump or Trump is the best. They will never come up and debate the facts surrounding voter fraud in this country because they know the facts are not on their side. This is a really simple proposition, guys. A really simple proposition. If you can't prove that voter fraud is a problem in this country, then let's not create a fix that's going to keep millions of people from voting. That makes no sense. It makes no sense from a Democratic perspective. It makes no sense from a Republican perspective. And it certainly makes no sense from a fiscal perspective that we would create an entirely new fiscal burden for this country in the voting process to fix a problem that isn't there. Now, if you like what you're hearing, then I'm going to ask you to follow us. You can subscribe to us here on YouTube. Our website is back40action.org, all spelled out, back40action.org, backfortyaction.org. You can donate to our cause there. We go all over the country, guys, talking about these issues that are critical to rural America. How do we fix healthcare in rural America? How do we fix education in rural America? How do we fix economics, including ag policy in rural America? I have been all over the country. I've been to Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas. I've been to California, New Mexico, Arizona. I've been to Illinois, Indiana. I've been to Ohio. I've been to West Virginia, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Kentucky. I've gone all over the country to talk about these issues. And if you want to support us in our efforts to do that, we've got an Act Blue link at back40action.org. You can help donate to that there. But I don't want you to give up on this argument. Do not let them wear you down. This thing needs to be filibustered into the ground. And the good news is we've got Democrats that are fighting hard in the Senate to prevent that from happening. And there are a few good conscience Republicans, I think, that are going to try to stand in the way too. But this will be a very serious impediment to women in the next two election cycles if we allow the SAVE Act to pass. So you need to get on the phone, especially if you live in a red state, especially if you're in here and you're a Republican woman, even if you don't support the Democrats, but you support your right to vote, you need to get on the phone. You need to send emails to your Republican representatives and senators and tell them do not support the SAVE Act because it is going to put unwarranted and unnecessary roadblocks in the way of me voting as a woman. And listen, the discriminatory aspects of this, they don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican or black or white or older or younger or where you live. This is going to set up a roadblock and impediment to you voting regardless. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Let me type our website into the comments. If you want to go out and support us or follow us, I'm going to encourage you to do that as we go around the country and talk about these things. That's where you can learn more about what we do. I'm going to be coming on YouTube more regularly, several times a week, to try to grow our YouTube audience. We've got a great following on YouTube. We're closing in on 60,000 subscribers on YouTube. I think we're one of the largest, if not the largest, rural contributors out there to social media. So I just want to thank all of you for coming in today. I want to thank all of you for listening to what I have to say about the SAVE Act. If you want to get more information about what we do, back40action.org. And Woodpile, I really appreciate it. I'm going to try to go onto TikTok a little bit later tonight. They've got me restricted over there. I have no idea why, but they've got me restricted over there. They absolutely don't like what I'm saying after the Ellison buyout about keeping voting fair in this country. But anyway, you know what to do. Get out there and start talking about this, especially women. I know a lot of women follow me. I have more female followers than I do male followers in the United States. So I'm going to ask you ladies, get out there and fight for this right, okay? Get out there and fight for this right. And I promise you that I'm going to do everything I can on my end to help preserve this right to vote for you, okay? Listen, everybody, have a great day. That, in a nutshell, is the SAVE Act and why we need to stop it. And I'm going to rely on you. You get my back, I'll get your back, and we'll prevent this thing from happening. Everybody have a great day, guys.